anywhere that that's available. One of the things that we talked about in the planning session, agenda planning session, is start times. If we feel like there's a need to start earlier, later, we try to be conscious to the items on there. We try to identify estimated amount of time. Some items take more, some items take less. We certainly don't have, without a sign-up sheet in advance, we don't have a firm idea of what that public forum session is going to be. I would say the majority of the time we have one or no commenters. So we don't have a true estimate of what that's going to be. But if there's need for more of that time, we're comfortable setting it. And I do appreciate Brad's effort to try to get us to adjourn the work session early, even if there's discussion going on, so that we get time to prep ourselves or at least get a stand up right before the regular meeting. One other thing that I want to point out, just as an ask of staff, is that if we have something within that bill, but consent agenda, that we want to discuss, to bring it forward in the work session too, so that we have some time to maybe look into it more in depth. When we get into the regular meeting and we talk about the bills, if we don't have the information right in front of us, or we just don't have it right at knowledge at hand, it gives us some, I guess for us, it just gives us a little feeling that we weren't prepared when we are. Lori comes with all the bills, but we often have hundreds of pay items to dig through, and some of the details aren't well pointed out in the script beforehand. We're not going to know. So,
okay. Can I, Mr. President, may I think we can even go deeper than that, John. As in, if we review the packet, find a entry on the bills we have a question about, email Lori and get the answer. It might be a dead issue come time for the work session.
Absolutely. We will respond to all of those inquiries.
Same thing with minutes,
as quickly as we can.
corrections.
That's what I meant in the city too when I talked to them, because that way you're not with somebody on the spot at the meeting. That's like, whoa.
I would say we're not perfect in our grammar and those things. Those items are going to come through. Appreciate acknowledging them and pointing them out to us so we can get them corrected. We do appreciate that. But we're happy to address things as early as we can identify them. So if any of that stuff comes up beforehand or even during, if you have a discussion item before the work session, we're happy to address it there and be able to make sure that we have a full answer, a good response that can versus on the spot and not dragging down the meeting and taking up more time during the regular meeting.
Even citizens' complaints, it's a good idea to present them to the office beforehand. And like you say, it could be a non-issue later. I have most of my citizen complaints resolved before the meetings. It's best instead of just rehashing certain things.
On that topic though, there's another community that had some discussion about their public forum, and what they were experiencing with people that were coming using the public forum, but then there wasn't any. They were concerned about not addressing it or having some identification of where that item was going to go to at the time of the meeting or at the end of the meeting. So they wanted to be sure that if people came with a valid comment that was reflected, relative to the business of the city that they could do something with, that there was acknowledgement about what staff department it was going to go to, what type of action they wanted to see, either staff handling the situation or bringing it back to the next meeting, or if there's something like that. So I didn't know if that was a consideration that we wanted to have, if we wanted to set a time or set a item, if there was items brought up, even going into constituent complaints that you guys address, if you wanted to kind of have a direction or a consensus of direction where to send that item to in terms terms of their staff's gonna direct it, so that we can have a procedure and a follow-up of, these items come forward, here's who it's gonna go to, here's what we're gonna work on to address it. We can have a report on it, or follow up on it at the next meeting, or kind of at the meeting in which the item is completed.
I like that idea, but I think it'd be almost easier for you to direct. Because I direct it to you, because you would know who to handle it more than I probably would if it's, whether it's water, wastewater, or whatever, if you're okay with that. We would point it out, but.
Kind of like following a chain of command type deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it, just so that there's really that consistency of, just what we have with our new IT system, when we file a complaint or ticket, there's a process that goes through, we go through and make sure that there's follow-up. Because sometimes there's, we hear it, we understand it, but without any direction from the council, either to send it to me to address, that item might fall through the cracks and things.
And I think we've seen that, so I think it'd be great to address it.
We have a good follow sheet
That's
that we do internally for staff, of like where action items go to if they came up at the council, but that feedback loop, I think, could be.
Where that's really important is when you're going through negotiations. If we try to start talking to, members out there instead of going to you because you're the one that's at the table with them.
Yeah.
Things can get really messy if we
Yeah.
try to go doing something like that.
So yeah, I think if there's that, we can try to work on that process a little bit
Is
more.
that something that you think should be done right away at that moment? Somebody in the council say, Mr. President, can we direct this
What they did was saved it to the very end of the actual meeting and said, okay, this is where we're.
The council meeting or not the work
The
session?
council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have their work session, the forum in the work session, and then at the end of the council meeting, they reserve time to say any items that we want
So
to
that would
address
be
the
an
staff.
agenda
This
item
is-
then?
Yep.
And then anybody could bring
Yeah,
up anything
and
they
give us
heard.
some time to process that, come
Yeah.
up with some ideas
Yeah.
before the next, certainly not available.
It's a good idea, because you're right.
I like the opportunity for the feedback, just to make sure that, because we do keep track of those, of items that we have that came up in the council meeting, but to bring those back and report on the council. So.
And just so we touch base with the person, we don't necessarily have to advertise at the meeting, but perfect example is that guy whose yard got
Yeah, that was one of them.
accidentally, and then he's not hearing anything, because we haven't directed anything, so he at least needs to know the solution, either it is or it isn't, John, do something about it, so.
Well,
I think
it's
that's good.
Get the reputation of being a council, they present stuff before us, and we turn a deaf ear and walk away, and, it just irritates people.
Yeah. They at least hear back, that's.
And, it's our responsibility, they should hear back.
Okay.
I think it's important to really remember that those people out in the community are our bosses, that they're the ones that we need to answer to, that we should be listening and hearing and trying to resolve whatever issues they have. Sometimes it may seem, very not very important to us as a council, but to them it is important. If we know where to direct people, it makes it a lot, makes us look more unified when we know the answer
Yeah,
to direct them to.
and the thing is, we balance that with the resources that we have, because, not everything gets the highest priority all the time, and that's fortunate and unfortunate, but, we have to work within the resources and the things that we have, as well, so it is good to understand, and that's another, so I'm leading into a segue, another reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because for you all, it's important that you have an opportunity to see a broader picture and a longer term in terms of your decision, because there may be items that come up that we've been talking about for a long time, but then something of urgency or emergency comes forward, and that takes precedent versus what we have. So we're going to do our best to try to keep you as informed as possible, but understanding that we don't know of everything that's going to happen all the time.
Would there be would it be possible to kind of make up an algorithm of some sort? So let's say somebody comes to me with a parking problem. Okay, now do I bring that to you, or is that something that can go right to the chief of police? We're trying to have a little bit of a problem, you know, and what is it, what is your responsibilities, what is the chief of police's responsibilities, what is Lori's responsibilities? You
I
know?
see the hierarchy of our organization as council to city administrator. And really, in this profession, the city administrator is that liaison connection point between the council and then all of the other staff and departments. The only other, within our hierarchy, the only other position that's adjacent to the administrator in terms of direct communication with the council is the city attorney. I know other cities do have police chiefs that have direct reports, but that isn't how we operate. That's not to say that you can't talk to them. It's a small town. We know everybody. There's deficiencies that come forward, and I'm not saying that they're not going to listen. They absolutely will, and they'll be considerate of doing that. But just to be mindful that that's really the intent. And then by sending it through the city administrator office, we can set some of that priority and you know, truly identify where maybe that issue is already being addressed too. So we can try to understand what department might be addressing it and what the issue might be, if there's other solutions that are already being had. But I think for us, we need to get better too as staff, getting that feedback loop back to you about reporting of the items that come up. So I think we're going to be working on how we get that reporting back to you so that you know when you've gotten a constituent component that you get some follow-up in terms of how that was addressed.
And also, how do we get the issues with the people, our constituents? How do we move them through the system?
Yeah.
So that, you know, it's not just everything going downhill. There's got to be a mechanism to get things going up here also.
If you wouldn't mind, I want to be mindful of your time, and I'm going to move us on. This first part's an update. Sorry for some of that being small. We have 2 positions that we recently posted, 4 posted internally and we posted to the public. Our accounting clerk and our utility billing clerk, this is Lisa Lewick and Kathy White. Both have indicated to us, one formally with the final date, that they're going to be leaving their positions, moving out of state. And these are incredibly important, valuable positions that IFEs cannot not fill with the treasurer. We wouldn't be served well by not filling. These positions need to be filled. We revised the job descriptions that's been approved. So looking at one of them to be filled as soon as, or we'd like both positions to be filled, just so that it gives us some time to train, because one of them we really won't have any overlap between the time in the facilities and then the new person comes up, because the date's coming up in early July, actually, not mid. So the other piece is I wanted to try to lay this out, and this isn't in terms of direct positions, but more in terms of work that we're doing. But where I see an oversight of our administration office, I think there's 3 critical areas that we have. Internal administration is really that operational, discussion of how do the employees, staff, how does that communication from the council through the administrator go back to them? Likewise, the same way from the staff going back up to the council. So it's a really important part of my duty. But there's also another aspect that isn't incorporated in this, but what is my involvement in relationship with the community and my opportunities to be active and be out and participating in different things going on in the community. I think we're of an organizational size where that's going to be a hard balance if I have a lot of focus internally on things that we need to do in staff. So there may be some needs in the future that we look at how that relationship happens and through whom. But I do think it's a core part of our department, this department's role. Finance is incredibly important. It is the engine that's going to drive everything that we do. All of the activities that we're really engaging in are going to come around revenue in and revenue out. So those are incredibly important positions, and that's really where these clerk positions and Lori as well for that finance officer. It's incredibly important activities that we oversee. And then finally, what we're discovering with Michaela, our new hire, is that our HR, we were behind in just activities and things that we needed to do relative to our HR and our activities with our employees. And she's doing an excellent job of bringing us up to date with the way that we're operating, and really bringing forward some strategies for us to improve things long term. So she's been an incredible asset to us in the short time that she's been here. So I see that as being another key cog to this. So as this department changes or modifies or evolves over time with these new positions, I think those are three key functions, and then the orange is just some of those activities that are going to be in there. Granted, there's going to be a lot more functions, but I think those are going to be the things that I'm going to continue to have us focus on as we change. So I've asked other staff to be here and provide some input. Public Works, we had Dennis Collhammer's position. He really served as a great kind of coverall to everything that we had, just random things to do, and now that he's gone and that position hasn't been fully filled, we've been just doing the side duties in other random departments. We're discovering that there's a potential need as a core position to fill that, as well as depending on what our engineering load is and our future of our engineering department, we want to be mindful of how maybe are those things related? Are they going to be different? Where do they best fit within our organization? Where do they best fit within unions? So it's something that we're definitely discussing and trying to work through and uncover. But the immediate needs here are filling some of those job duties that Dennis was doing, that right now we're supplementing with other staff, that it's not something that's part of the core function. We're just finding who can do it at this time. And those times evolve. But it's really getting to be a strain when now we're getting into our busier season for work. And those departments may not have that luxury to take care of these other tasks. Greg, do you want any comments to?
The toughest part for us is going to be finding someone that's a technician to be able to do our civil 3D and stormwater, or that's going to be the hardest factor in.
That's a good point. Once you address some of the new information that we've learned on stormwater, this just came to head the last couple weeks.
So the stormwater component of it, because we're along the Mississippi River, we're considered MS4. It's stormwater, I don't even know what the acronym stands for anymore. Basically, the state looks at us and says you need to look at the stormwater going into the Mississippi River, make sure it's treated properly before it goes into the Mississippi River. The regulations that they're putting on that are going to rival what they're doing with the wastewater stream. Their format is looking very similar in terms of the requirements, the testing requirements, so on and so forth. And so the reporting on that is going to be probably very similar to our wastewater system as well. So the new technician that would eventually fill Dennis's spot with, I would see them also taking on the stormwater role. Currently, Brad has been doing a lot of that, but he's getting stretched extremely thin, so I'd like to roll this into that new position. Unfortunately, with the civil 3D side of things, which is our CAD drafting and design that we use, the schooling for that, basically there's either graduation in December or in May. And so the timing is going to be difficult. There's also a shortage for technicians. MnDOT can't find them, the county can't find them, cities can't find them. Consultants have a difficult finding them as well. So we're hopeful that we can find an entry-level one that we can train and groom in-house here. But the key is going to be getting somebody that has some of that civil 3D training and experience in order to grow those other roles into that position.
Thank you. So as you no water and wastewater. We currently filled 2 wastewater operator positions. So within those departments, we're very well staffed. But with the renovation project and construction going on in the wastewater plant, that one of the ideas that we've been working towards or trying to build towards is really developing a department of treatment operators, regardless of whether they're specific to water or wastewater. But we do need to be mindful of the license requirements that we have for both facilities. So we need an A wastewater license operator for the waste plant. We need a B license operator for the water plant. A wastewater license operators are some of the hardest they get in all of the state, regardless of departments that you have. So they take a minimum of, I want to say it's like 10 years total in the field before you can even test into A operators. So if you have one, you want to keep them as best you can. And build some redundancy to having a second one on staff if you can as well. So currently we do have one on staff with Matt Straight, and he's our supervisor for wastewater right now. And Dwayne Heinen is our supervisor for water. He does have to be B operator or B license on water is a little bit easier to get. But as we move through look past the times when when the renovations are done at the waste plant, we do need to be mindful. There are some feasibility plans with the water plant, some improvements that still need to be made there in the long term, in trying to figure that out. But I think it's important that we look at the possibility of having crossover amongst those operators so that they're working more in long-term rotations, like 6 months, a year at a time, and working in each facility, building the experience that they need to independently operate those. Right now, we do have a rotational schedule, so we have some weekend coverage. So you're getting part of that, but they're only about every 5 weeks that they get that opportunity. And when so a wastewater operator gets operating the water plant, a couple days every 5 weeks, and it's not really enough to get them the comfortability I feel they need, or they feel they need. This is what they've expressed to me. They feel they need to, so that when they're there, that they can operate. So really, staffing wise, so far we're sitting very good. But I do want to create a process where we can be mindful of trying to build some backup redundancy, and what do we need to do in terms of structuring that department with those operators and try to not only motivate or encourage building in that redundancy, but have that in terms of the structure of what those positions are going to be in terms of title and responsibility. So just nothing in the forefront, but something to be mindful of as we move forward.
I'm just curious, are the operators desirous of that? I mean, do they want to go back and forth? I don't know.
They've expressed that they actually do like that. They like the variety in their jobs and the opportunity to have some new additional skill sets and be able to work in terms of different departments. Having a conversation with the supervisors. Concerned now, just with the renovations going on, if you're trying to build that in now, it puts us at risk, because instead of 2 fresh faces, we might have 4, depending on what we'd be doing with the water operators and the waste plant during the construction. So we're not pushing on this right now, but we are we're discussing it as a strategy. I think they're open to it. There's been positive feedback so far.
Is this something that needs to be looked at contractually with the?
It would become part of the discussion in terms of contracts as we develop and modify or evolve the positions.
Because doing something like that, would that help with their licensures too, so you can move from Class B to Class A and stuff like that?
Yeah, we have in our current contract in those operators, we actually created a structure to encourage achieving those higher licenses. So as in that union group, you can be hired in unlicensed, but you have to achieve your first license, I think D operator, in order to proceed into the second step. And then in order to proceed past the fourth step, you have to have earn your C license. And then in order to proceed past the sixth step, you have to have at least a B license in order to get to the final seventh step. So we built in a little bit of it already within the contract. So I think that structure works. You know, it's just a matter of how do we ensure there's redundancy in terms of and you know compensating the employees as such. So if a supervisor is gone, who's the next man up?
I think even retirements and stuff, if you got some type of way, okay, we're looking at, you know, this guy's
Yeah.
gonna look at retirement in a couple of years, we got.
And right now, that's one of the few departments where I think we have a little better outlook for the long term. We don't have too much potential that within the next 5 years we're going to be losing employees out of there just based on specific, more generic age criteria. Not that anybody is, things couldn't change for anybody at any time. But that one we're sitting a little bit better in terms of their length of employment. Please, yeah.
Now, for something like this with the extra higher paid staffing, no doubt, that's not supported at all by fees, is it? Isn't that only for infrastructure? That as well? We can, I would say here, a 1 to 2 cent change in a rate structure is going to offset some of that. Okay.
I mean, we bill out hundreds of millions of gallons between water and sewer every year. So, and in building those rates and modifying those rates, we want to keep the consumption rates tied into the operation, and these would be directed back into operational expenses and not capital or debt service expenses that we have in the flat fees.
Okay.
So I don't see this as impacting the flat fee amounts. It's going to impact consumptions, but staffing wise, we got some flexibility in terms of the modest changes impacting them as well. And we'll see. And as if we're fortunate enough to build some redundancy, there may be opportunities here where even attrition or just right sizing that department could work for us. We have some anticipations of how the new plant's going to operate, but we don't have any guarantees. And who knows? There might be a lot more opportunity for us in 2 years once those major constructions are done, and if we have some more automation or more remote coverage, we might be able to better flex our positions to a department size. I don't see it growing past the size that it is. Police department, chief's here, really very good in terms of our total operations. We did make a modification to adding an investigator assignment within our department versus which moved away our assignment to the Violent Offenders Task Force, the Drug Task Force officer. But as we get some catch up or we build some, get the right, get the right workload balance with that, there may be the opportunity to move that forward and bring that back. Defer to the chief if he has any other comments or input.
And we didn't lose our support of the task force.
No, I'm still a member of the board. We're still active with Central Minnesota Task Force. The sheriff and I have also been in discussions with the Crow Wing County Sheriff as well, just to see. They're an independent task force on their own, which is just their own county. So we've been speaking with them to keep those doors open with them as well. So right now that position is moved internal to an internal investigator position. So I don't have a person on the task force at the moment, but we're still looking at that. We're still working those cases.
Again, or other streets, parks, both right now we're pretty adequate in terms of our staff and the parks. We can get seasonal help to help us in the summertime. We do have some I think there's potential for the streets, there's opportunities for employees to get assignments, move up. We have a structure of heavy equipment operators, so there are some tiers to that employment world, and as, as employees are completing their careers, we have some opportunities internally to move those up. So, one of these things too is vision-wise, our ideal situation for position fills is the higher up we'd like to have opportunities to fill internally if we can, and then backfill the positions at the most entry level pieces, so that we have employees that are building experience at entry level stuff, so that they can move up within different departments to the higher skill, higher responsibility positions as we can find them. So it's right now. But one thing I did want to point out is that other communities, when Greg and I toured in Redwood Falls, their community center, they had a person that was their Parks and Work director, really was their community center manager as well, so that facility, the way they utilized it, really needed the attention of staff to help manage that, coordinate all the activities and things that are going on as well. So that if that is a need for us, that's something to be mindful of how we're going to consider.
And the guy said he's going to come to the
He did say that. And then golf, really hard to discuss this too in depth until we have a little better understanding of where we go in terms of facilities. Have been really researching some different opportunities, the lease options, the various things that are out there in terms of how other courses, other municipal courses are managing that, whether they have a hybrid of some city staff to some lease situations where the leaseholder is managing some of the facilities, or that there's leases for the entire facilities. There's different breakdowns of that, but just wanted to be mindful that to include it.
John, just one thing to add to that, and I think it's Wapakata. I think Raquel made the point that, if we end up going forward with this and we would have an event center, it's important that we can serve the event and golfers at the same time, because like Wapakata has a big
Territory.
Territory?
Yeah,
Wapakata does too.
Oh, they do too?
Yeah.
I know territory and Coyote Moon.
Yeah, territory's got really nice there, but just so you can't tell golfers, no, you can't use the bar and restaurant tonight because we're having an event.
Yeah, and that has been part of the design so that we can segregate the facilities.
John?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, a couple years ago, I was doing a little research on developing the Jason Kennedy building downtown. And part of that process was, cost and expenses and revenue and payroll and all of that. And so I ran some cash flow projections. If it's okay with the council, I'd like to work with John to maybe use some of those numbers to give us a jump start on some potential, plug those numbers into the golf course clubhouse. I don't want to just take a lead on this, without the council's approval. To just, and I did talk to John, and he seems that he'd be okay with that. And they're all on paper with a pencil, and nothing is, because I'm a math person, I don't know how to use.
So yeah, I'm absolutely comfortable with doing that. I do feel we have to have some direction in terms of what our operations are going to be, or at least suggestions of what we're going to present to the council in terms of how they want to see it operated, or that you can make a decision on how to operate it. Because the way we are today with the facilities that we have, it's not sustainable to what we're doing. We do have two full-time staff there. I would really struggle that when one retires, or that we have a hard time advocating that we fill 2 full-time spots, and certainly not with the skill set of Rich and being the manager and having his background and knowledge of on the course operations versus the interior. I think we have some needs, certainly have needs in managing that interior better. So if there were to sustain 2 full-time employees, the interior would be the direction I want to encourage us to do that. But even then, I still don't know with the existing facility how we're financially going to support that. And there needs to be some modifications, which I guess is another segue to the next topic of discussion, which are I'm going to turn over to Mitchell to kind of lead us on through the research that he's done and give you some information about facilities that we have and improvements that we have planned.
All right, my name is Mitchell Shermers, and I've been intern at City Hall for the last month or so. And this is one of the first tasks that John had for me, so I went around and had some meetings with the heads of the departments, and this was a presentation of all the information I got from them in those meetings. So first I met with Chief Shermers and got some information on the building. The police department was renovated into the police department in 1994. There are no current plans for renovations right now. The parts of the facility that aren't meeting the needs, let's start with evidence and processing. The evidence and processing currently is too small for larger pieces of evidence such as a door or a mattress that they would need to hold. And there's no space for the evidence intake, processing, and lockup. Additionally, this would ensure the integrity of the evidence because they're not supposed to have contact with the evidence after it's already been checked in. So possibly having it off-site at a different location would be really helpful. Along with this, having the evidence intake, we were looking at a digital tagging system which would more efficiently intake the evidence. Next, the server room. Currently, the server room also contains furnaces. This does not provide a safe or effective place to hold the servers because they're supposed to be in temperature controlled environment. And with the furnaces in there, that's definitely counterproductive to the whole system. And the server room itself does not have measures taken to ensure limited access. Since the furnaces are also in there, the door has to be open to maintain the airflow to keep the furnaces useful instead of keeping all of the heat in the server room. And the studs in the building run horizontally instead of vertically, so rewiring the building is ineffective and you would be able to move the servers. The furnaces, I believe the furnaces were just updated. They were recently updated.
We've struggled with the furnaces. We have 3 different zones that regulate the cold and the cooling and the heating in the building. And it becomes a real challenge with those zones because of restricted airflow and then just the way where thermostats are located. Within those zones, it becomes, sometimes you have competing furnaces that are, they're competing against each other to maintain the temperature in the building, and then Brad, you notice that a lot. Yeah, it becomes very problematic sometimes. One room can be 50 degrees and another room can be 80 degrees. It just depends on where in the zone you are. So we've had multiple companies come and look at that. We've had furnaces replaced. We've put big vents and knocked holes in walls to increase airflow through those furnaces, but it's just the nature of the building. It just is impossible to regulate the temperatures in the building. So it's a struggle if the temperatures are moderate, we're okay, but in the extreme cold and the extreme heat, then we get problems.
Sounds like City Hall.
Yeah.
Really cold in here, right?
And in addition to that, because they're not properly aired, it sometimes results in ice collection. And when that ice melts, it's a threat to the servers that are in the same room. The break room doesn't have enough space for all the staff to convene and hold a meeting at one time. And there's no training space on site, so they need to rent off-site training spaces. The storage space has been totally utilized for desks for all the officers. I spent some time at the police department cleaning out the storage space with just all their old incident reports, and it's chock full of stuff. The garage has a leak, which sends water down into the gym, so there's water damage on the walls and in the garage itself, I believe. Next, we have the water treatment facility built in 1974. Currently, there is phase 2 and 3 of their update plans. I'm not quite sure what that entails, but there are plans in place right now. The booster stations and water towers have no current needs other than their planned maintenance. There does need to be an update to the computer system, the PLC, which went down recently. There needs to be a new roof on the ground storage and the plant itself, and an outside switch for the fan needs to be added to the core equal to maintain the regulations. Public Works Facility, built in 2007, also has no planned renovations. Currently not meeting the needs. They would like to see more space for storage added. They were thinking hypothetically storage rafters above where the vehicles are being parked right now. Also, the air exchange, they'd like to see that fixed along with like the heating and cooling zones that they have in the police department. They have some similar issues in this building. They would also like water and trash pumps in case of an emergency, and new roof along with the plant maintenance of the building. Next, the wastewater treatment facility, built in 1985 and updated in 2004. There are current updates to the facility that are in progress this summer, but they're also looking at an update to the water testing lab and the control center and the HVAC in that same building, along with the roofs. The fire hall on the east side, built in 1976, no planned renovations except possibly repainting the vehicle bay. I spoke with Chief Neiman, and he said the building was meeting their needs right now, but there were just really small updates such as the cabinets, the maintenance area, and the entrance door in the back. Also, a new generator and an update in the bathroom to maintain the ADA compliance.
Just want to expand on that a little bit. I think there's a need over there if they want to be able to pull through, like so they have back doors on the building so they can just drive out on a fire call and then when they get done, come in through the back.
Next we have the golf course. They originally built it at 6 holes in the 1930s, added 3 more in the late 50s, early 60s, and expanded to 18 holes in the 1980s. They finally added the deck on the clubhouse in 1997. There is a proposed construction that Mr. Rodman was talking about, the event center, and that would also serve as the new clubhouse if it were to be constructed. Currently not meeting the needs in the clubhouse would be, let's see what I got here. The windows and doors, also the flooring is not level. It's really old, so they need to update that. Under maintenance and cart storage, we have the need for a larger cart storage area because 15 of the carts currently stay outside regardless of what the weather is. Also, the middle garage at the facility takes on water when there's melting. Also, the irrigation is said to be updating along with a new suction line, and they'd like to see the cover building re-sided just for cosmetic purposes. And parking, there's limited parking as it is, and if the event center were to be added, there would definitely be a need for more parking in that area.
John, is the irrigation out there even running on a timer yet, or is it still?
They've had some issue, every year there's a new issue.
Well, right, and that's, I know for a time, somebody got to turn it on and off.
Yeah, no, it is on automation now. The problem this year was the intake valve, or intake piping broke and was disconnected, sucking, it went all the way down to the floor of the river, so it was pulling in materials and then that got clogged into the pumps. So they got that addressed and fixed, and now it's back to running. But the automation on it has been working, and VFD controls, I think it was last year, And then this year, even when they got the system up and running, there were about 4 major leaks. But that's gonna happen every season, off season. You can't, we get the lines blown out, but you can't get everything out of there. And you got miles and miles of irrigation pipe throughout that course, so that stuff.
Do they pump out of the river?
Yeah,
we
we just
filter
pull out
on the end
the
of
river,
it.
yeah,
That's
permitted to do that.
change every year.
What's that?
Do they change that filter every year? That's out in the river? The end of the pipe that comes in, is pulling the water?
Yeah, I believe they do the screen filters, yeah. Because that all gets removed in the off season.
Yeah.
And-
I was wondering if they put it back in, if they put new
Yeah,
filter on.
there's a part of the hose that disconnected and let the line get too far.
Next, we have the City Hall building, built in 1932 and renovated into City Hall in 1974. There are no current plans for renovation right now. Starting with building maintenance, we have leaky roof and walls when it's windy and rainy outside, a splitting floor in the main part of the building on the opposite side. Also, the windows don't open, and that could add to bad circulation and the HVAC with
Very similar HVAC air circulation issues.
problematic heating and cooling. And the sink and breaker that freezes when it gets too cold outside. Onto office space, the building isn't really set up for practical use in the office area because of the splitting floor and the weight-bearing pillar that we have in the office areas. Also, there's an additional need for conference room and boardroom space. Security measures. Some files are stored in the main hallway, and if someone isn't at the front desk, someone could potentially come in and just grab those files. Not that someone would set up to do that, but if someone wanted to, it's a possibility. So having one receptionist for the whole building would be probably more effective in terms of security. Council chambers, according to the safety audit, the exits and cover are ineffective in situations such as an active shooter, and that would need to be addressed if we were to stay in this current building. Also, public accessibility concerns. Starting with the door just into the council chambers, it opens out into the hallway, so that kind of congests the hallway if people are trying to get to and from. So maybe simply moving it so that they open inward instead. Closing off the avenue door to have one main entrance up by the parking lot, because there we have the handicap accessibility and other.
The door on the avenue on the north side of the building used to be primary entrance years ago before the parking lot was completed and the ramp installed. We witnessed people with some accessibility concerns, elderly folks that use those stairs because they've known it to be a consistent entrance, but really they'd be much better suited for entering the parking lot, and using the ramps and automated doors on that end. So certainly for us, we want to advocate for directing.
Also, in the entrance area, we have a lot of rugs, and sometimes those cause tripping. But if they're taken out, the floors are slippery, so that main entrance area is kind of a concern. And additionally, the roof, when there's a lot of rain or stuff in the winter, it drains onto the sidewalk, and when it freezes, there can be people slipping and other issues that can arise from that. Next, Milky and prison buildings, currently mostly being used for storage. The Milky building needs a new tin roof and possible ventilation, and there are no current plans for renovation on this building. The prison building could do with new rafters in the west wing because the roof is starting to cave in, and along with that would be a new roof. As far as the parks go, we have a couple things that we would like to see added to them, and there are no planned renovations. We're looking at a new hockey rink and warming house at Pine Tree Park, just to increase the amount of people that would be there. We heard a lot of comments saying that people would be more inclined to go there if the warming huts were open, or if it was like
Warm?
yeah, exactly, a nice place to be at. A band shell at Le Bourget Park, possible changing rooms added to Churchill Park if the splash pad were to be added to that. Redoing the bathrooms at Pine Grove Park, and restaining or repainting the pavilion at Maple Island Park. Carnegie Library, renovated in 1996. Currently, they are seeing into the heating issues in the building. And just the one thing that Mr. Freeman mentioned was that they sometimes have bats in the building, so having that looked at would be a big help. And finally, we have the Rosenmeyer home, built in 1903. Currently, I saw planned in the budget for redoing the porch, and that was this summer, and I don't know what the plans are for that project, but I saw it in the capital improvement plan already. In addition to that, they would like to see the trim painted on the eaves and redoing the railings to the second level, and having something done about the garage going in the back due to the erosion.
So they had a request for money for us, Mitch? 2 billion there?
So I guess for me, the purpose of this is really to identify and outline everything that we have, so that we're conscious of all the assets that we do have and the potential maintenance that go along with them. A number of these things are really going to come out of the general fund in terms of responsibilities for where those finances are located. The water, wastewater, have their own budgets, and the golf course as well has its own funds to help manage and offset those costs, but most of the rest of the items that we presented are going to be general fund responsibility. So for what would be beneficial for us, and I ask of the council, is to take into consideration the things that you saw presented, the potential needs, and try to identify and prioritize what it is that we want to accomplish, or the direction that we at least want to go to study some of the improvements that are necessary in these facilities. We've gotten there's definitely assets of having been in these facilities for as long as we have, and we've gotten very good use out of them in the time that we're here. But there's going to be moments where the decisions are going to have to be made on what direction we're going to go. Are we going to stay at City Hall within this facility? Are we going to put into investments into renovation and safety improvements into this building? Are we going to do the same with the police station? Other communities have combined City Hall and police station. It's just like our neighbors in North and Baxter. Stopped by and toured a little bit last week.
Okay, so for just sake of discussion, let's say we moved out of here. What would we do with this
That's a great
building?
question.
I mean, we couldn't even tear it down, right? I mean,
Imagine not, it was built in the works WPA as a water treatment plant. It has historical significance for our community. It has useful life with improvements. I think it serves purpose. It could definitely serve something, but we don't have, nothing has come forward as a just a lightning bolt idea of what could be here if we move out of this building.
Is there a basement here?
There is, it's a huge basement.
Well, see, the thing is
Very little access.
you could put up a new building and still end up with a lot of expenses. What he's saying, that this building isn't going to be used for a purpose. And we have enough expenses as far as maintaining old buildings in this town. I was just over at the Rosenmeyer house. Porch is beyond, you could push and your finger goes right through pillars coming up and stuff. That's bad. It's going to get worse. It needs to be taken care of or torn down. I hate to say it that way, but if we're going to keep it as a building that the city owns, plus a lot of people go there, that kind of sets an image of what our town is like. When you see a rotting porch, you're kind of leery of even walking on it. it's not saying a whole lot about our city, so it has to be addressed. And we're working on a comp plan right now, 20-year comp plan, that, and some of the ideas in there were to look at probably building a new police station and city hall, because they're both becoming too archaic for their purpose, especially the police station. What they're dealing with there is, they're just hodgepodging and getting by. They need a facility that they can actually use. So these are very important things right now. And then you bring up how we're to get back to the city, our constituents. Our staff problem has to be taken care of right now. Otherwise, it takes longer to get back to them. I mean, I've heard from numerous people, they make requests, and sometimes, and it's not the staff's fault, they just can't get to it. They have other things to do, but they're not getting back to them in 3 weeks, a month, sometimes longer. Sometimes they never get back. So we have to address this. All these issues are important, and I'm glad we're bringing it up here now.
So for us, I think that the ask on my part is we've been kind of thinking about it in the next month or so. How do we, budget, as budget season is going to start, how are we going to incorporate these plans and try to identify a strategy for making our investments in the district?
Do you think maybe, do you work off of any 5-year, 10-year plan?
Yes, yeah. So like what Mitchell was talking about in terms of the plan renovations is we're reviewing our capital improvement plan. Those are the things that we have been setting forward in terms of, but those are also equipment needs, capital equipment needs as well as facilities. So the facilities have kind of been kept to the wayside because they've been somewhat adequate, or else we've made modest improvements to make sure that we can keep using them. But I honestly believe in the next 5 years a decision is going to happen. What do we do with both the police station?
And this isn't, none of this is included in.
We don't have it in. We don't have it in there because the direction, those decisions are a lot bigger than just staff saying, okay, we want to build a new city hall or we want to build a new police station. I think it's a much bigger and more important discussion to have of, we need new facilities on that. What are they going to be? Are they going to be combined? Are they going to be independent? Are they going to be renovated in existing locations? Are they going to be somewhere different? How do we balance out making all of those decisions? And for us, I think the important ask here is give us some direction in terms of how do we go out in presenting you with the information that you need to make those decisions, because these are assets for our community members. There are some levels that they need involvement too, and none of that comes without time and energy and expense to develop.
Would it be beneficial to maybe establish a board or a committee with department heads, yourself, maybe a couple council members to kind of look at what do we need to do in the next 5 years? And then extend it out to 10 years and then kind of work that into the budget process?
Yeah, so I would think that we should do something specific along those lines with facilities, specific to facilities, as Frank was mentioning with the comprehensive plan. Those are really broad community visions for over the next 20 years. How the whole community as a whole, what are the things? There are some specifics that we dive into as you have, if there are plans and that we know of, but we haven't started that process for this. And the last thing I want to do is come to the council with the request to build a new building because it's an emergency. We're well aware of the deficiencies that we have today. We're getting by. We'll make do. We'll work in these facilities as long as we have to. But there's going to be a point where they're not going to work anymore, and we want to be prepared to have had those discussions about whether the next plan so that we can do that without an emergency taking place.
John, what I would like to see, because you're kind of kicking it off here today with this information to us, and what I would like to see is something come out of each council person. Whether you put dollars on it, or, you know, have some of the background information and say, okay, what are your priorities? And let us fill them out, because it's gonna be an 8-person decision, obviously. So, you know, I would think that if you get some sort of information from all of us and then
Yeah.
pool it and see what.
So put together a list of facilities and give you the opportunity to kind of rank and prioritize which ones you would like to see improvements made, or at least develop plans for improvements. You know, kind of work in terms. I like the idea of working in terms of what is feasible. You know, we got everything's on the table. I mean, for options, they all come with dollars, but not every decision with its dollars is feasible. You know, it just isn't palatable for you as a council to make a decision on. It isn't palatable for the constituents to have to pay the taxes or fees to reimburse. We have a sense, you got feeling of what's available to us, but not entirely certain what those specific dollars are. So, you know, I think that's the important part for us as we move forward and try to figure out and gather the information that we need to present to you about what we're going to do with this. Like, what kind of those constraints, what are the challenges that we should be looking at forward.
Well, that was my point exactly, of establishing some type of a board or a committee, because then you can look at an extended plan, so you can look at the dollars and cents and figure out how can we incorporate this into our budget, and how is it gonna be paid for, instead of bringing something to the council, and you gotta make a decision within a month or two to spend, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of
Well,
dollars.
these are going to be, there are some of these in here that are multi-million-dollar decisions.
And that's something that has to be looked at over a period of time, so, you know, to me, it makes sense to sit down, so with the different department heads, administration, the council, and, because the thing is, when you're dealing with the department heads and yourself, you might be around a lot longer than some of us that are on the council, because with us, we gotta count on the public to vote us back in here, at least, so there might be a change in the council, be a person on that committee or board every few years, but if you can have a core group of people working on these extended budgets and extended plans for the city, it just makes sense to me to do
You're right
something.
on target and building in our facilities into our capital plan more in depth now, or more targeted. We have in certain extents, like the water plant with the feasibility plan or facility plans that we had and the phase renovations that we had. We built them in. We're trying to incorporate it. We tried to do that with the waste plant. We had a concept, an idea of what we thought it was going to cost to do a renovation, and then permitting came in and changed the scope of what we had to do. So yeah, there's some things that we're in the luxury of having the driver's seat to make that decision, and there's some things that are less so because of the state mandates them too.
But in our capital improvement plans, we don't extend things out 5-10 years.
We have some of them going past, well past 5 years. We just, when we do formal approvals of them, we only do it on a 5-year basis.
Well, capital improvement plans are presented by the employees
Yeah.
to the council, and then we look at them and approve them. And to me, you guys have already identified what the needs are. That's what Mitch did, and that's what everything else is. So if we could see any kind of dollars on that or numbers, to me, to have two people meet with all you guys for 2 or 3 years. We haven't agreed on a lot of things so far, so what means those two people are gonna bring anything that we're going to bring. And this is a council decision, not a staff decision. Because typically staff members gonna fight for what they want more than anything.
Yeah, I guess for us in terms of staff is we recognize that there are a lot, and I should add, this is on top of all the other infrastructure needs. This isn't even looking at, this isn't touching on infrastructure, and that's just upwards of $7 million a year that we would need just to maintain our base level pipes in the ground and streets on top of it. That's a whole nother balance that we have to incorporate with it. And I don't want to rob want Peter to pay Paul and sacrifice everything else there just to get a new city hall or a new police station. That's not, I don't think that serves our city well. We need to understand what the our total needs are and how do we balance them out and facilitate financing those decisions. So I will, if that's okay, I think that I'll, put together the list and give that to the council kind of as an ask and task to, take that list and prioritize. Lastly, for me, is I just want to put it out there for the council and make a request to you to, take the time and look into these different events and different activities that are going on in our community as well as regionally. Like the League of Minnesota Cities Conference is coming up at the end of this month, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Conference at the end of the next one. We have the local foods, local places, feasibilities next week, the Monday night and all day Tuesday. If you have the luxury of time to even if it isn't for the whole events, but if you can make an effort to try to be there and participate as much as you can, that it really is appreciative of our, because it serves us as staff greatly if you can also be in attendance and witness those as well. I know Greg and I have just been to a lot of different events together as well, and for him to hear and take back and there's so much, and lastly, I guess there's so many things going on that we can't. They have concurrent sessions, so we can't go to everything all at once. So I do want to sit down with Greg and actually coordinate what things we're going to go to. I was looking at the agenda last week and trying to pick and choose, and there's a couple of big, nice, great topics, informative pieces that are going on at the same time. I don't even mention it. So that's my ask of you all to just take advantage of that. We do have the budget to facilitate attendance to those conferences, those things that are involved in our community. And one more, Sprout and Five Wings Arts Council, along with a letter of support from the city, this was all last fall, but applied to for an Our Town grant, and they applied for a request of $150,000, and they actually received $75,000. And this will, I think, serve really well with this local foods, local places discussion that's happening, and taking those ideas and help bringing them into fruition as potential projects and opportunities in our community. So they're a great partner, both Five Wings and Sprout in our community, to helping facilitate that. So if there's opportunities for you to be involved in those discussions, I encourage you to take them.
Brad, you went to that coalition meeting with us. Could you just briefly say what you got out of that?
Oh, it was just, me, it was good because the things that we're dealing with, realize you're not the only city that's dealing with it. We hear how some other people responded or ideas that they have. It's more going on. Hopefully, you know,
A lot of connections with other cities.
and things that are available to help.
Okay.
Well, I think the city does a great job in applying for grants and this and that. And some of them grants and stuff, you're really restricted on what you can use that money for. So I think overall, you're on top of that stuff. And
in the end, though, too, the grants are great. We will apply and we will work towards grants as best as we possibly can. They also, I don't want to sound like the other groups, but they come with, it's not with catches, but they come with how do you sustain that facility that was paid for with a grant in the long term? Where do you come up with the resources to replace it in the end? Because there's never the guarantee that you get a grant to pay for this thing this one time, that when it's done, its useful life is over, it's there's another grant waiting on the back end to build it again, to replace it. So that's part of the way I think can operate. I'm trying to be future oriented and think ahead. It helps that I have staff that are very detail and day-to-day oriented that keep me grounded in how we get there. But we do need to be mindful of that as well.
And I think, just like what we were talking about with City Hall and the police department, I think this, we discussed the childcare needs within this, this will make, I think, an excellent, something that we would be able to work with childcare or finding affordable childcare so that our people in the city could.
That's valid, actually, that's a really valid point, because we could have playground equipment within a distance in this building. Yeah. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'm closed, so if there's another,
We have to motion to adjourn.
I think the chair could just adjourn.
our meeting, so.
Thanks for watching, everyone. You've been watching the strategic planning meeting of the Little Falls City Council. And just the, when I came in, they were discussing the rules of conduct, number 69 of city ordinances, and which involves the conduct of the audience members. There's nothing written in there about the conduct of the council, but there should be. Thanks for watching. This is June 17th, 2019. Appreciate you watching.
I just wonder if there's something to do, because I hate to see all restaurants and.
I think is when they did the rate itself, they should have extended that tax limit.
Got it all done.
Oh, Tal? Yes. I want to mention something to you. Because your paper printed that there was going to be an event called Chalk the Walk on the 27th.
I'm sure. Yes.
You did an article on that. I don't know who wrote it, but it was in the paper. I don't know what the reason is, but it has been deleted.
I'll take a look at that.
Canceled, changed, it's not,
The event?
it's the whole event, it's
The whole
gone.
event?
Right, so I think the paper should do some investigation, find out what the cause was, report on that, and then certainly let the public know, because,
Yeah, I'll take a look into that and see why they're not holding it.
very good. Thanks.
Thanks for bringing that.
Yep.
When people were supposed to go, people were